let's not get excited about the day-to-day, about the noise that's happening and pandemics and conflicts and this and that and the supply chains. Let's try to think in longer term, and let's try and build for what the world will be like in 5 or 10 years, because it's going to happen faster than we think. If we do plan well, then we'll be helping to build this new world. And I think it'll end up being this hybrid world of self-sustainability with a good modicum of government resources. And I think it will stabilize out that way. And I think that'll be a better world in the future.
And of course, we need to know, what is the most essential element of life? Water. Yes, because without water, you can't make coffee. You know what I'm saying? So welcome everyone to the CEO briefing. And we have a really great one tonight. So let's get it on, okay? Thank you, Linda. Yeah. You know, coffee jokes are a part of life, you know? I personally drink Danger coffee. And I don't get paid by Danger coffee, but the guy who did Bulletproof coffee and then sold it, he then created something called Danger coffee, which is like the best. It's certified non-toxic, and they have some kind of patented method for hydrating it or something like that, and remineralizing it for better hydration, whatever that means. But all I can tell you is it's tasty, and I don't get the jaggies. So that's my little plug for cool guys at Danger Coffee. Anyway, all right. So Water the Blue Gold, Thursday, October 5th, 2023, briefing number 231. Water is the people's asset. Let's continue here with the disclaimers. Some charts. I thought I'd share some charts with you that actually were sent to us by our patent attorney, and they're actually really interesting. I guess he felt he should contribute to our knowledge base, and he certainly did. So here we go. Per capita water consumption in cubic meters. Strangely enough, Colombia is the most. Why? I do not know. But United States comes second, but less than half. And all the way down to Luxembourg. I don't even know what these numbers mean. Per capita water consumption. I think it has a lot to do with the type of industries. Your guess is as good as mine. I actually don't. I've seen this chart before, and it does not correlate to stuff that I understand. All right, total water withdrawals by region. And Asia, of course, is doing the most water withdrawals, and that's really probably because of China. They're big water users. Americas, Europe, and Africa, and Oceania. Oceania being, of course, relatively small landmass. It's basically us, you know, Australia, New Zealand, and I think Indonesia, I'm guessing. So it's not a lot of landmass. Okay, so then, and Oceania, of course, I think it might include Japan, or that might be part of Asia. Market value of leading water companies. Now, this is where our ambition comes in. But who are the big guys? Xylem. Well, Eversource, of course, is very, very large. Saudi Arabian, American Waterworks, very good company. Xylem is a company that has grown tremendously. They just bought Evoqua, good company. Hong Kong and China. Suez, which I believe Suez includes Veolia. I'm not sure. So Veolia needs to be in this list somewhere. Central Utilities, United Utilities, Severn, and Companhia de Saneamento Básico do Estado do São Paulo. A lot of these are power utilities, i.e. not really private. But anyway, it gives you an idea of the size, 30 billion on down to 7 as of December 2022. Okay. Now, countries with the largest municipal water withdrawals worldwide in 2020. So China, again, United States, and India. Interesting about India. Indonesia on down. And it gives you an idea of who's the most efficient for water, I'm guessing. But what's strange is that I don't see Israel on the list, which I know that Israel is very, very efficient. So again, another interesting graph. Proportion of regional populations with access to sanitation facilities worldwide in 2020 by type. And so now, if you see the green, that's open defecation, all right? In the world, we have something like 8% of all access to sanitation facilities is just open defecation. The balance of the 20% there is unimproved. Only about 45% is safely managed. So that's not a good picture. Now let's take a look at what goes on here. Obviously, Australia and New Zealand is very well off. Europe and North America, fine, although we still have some limited unimproved there. Sub-Saharan Africa is not great. Oceania, it must include Indonesia. You know what? Because here's the problem. Australia and New Zealand are separate, so what the heck is Oceania? Maybe, AJ, you can pop that to me in the chat. That'd be good for you to look that up for me, because I'm not sure. Okay. Most expensive prices of drinking water. Moscow is the highest. This is the drinking water out of your tap, right? And then we have Vancouver. LA is very, very high. Everything else is Scandinavian countries. Interestingly enough, that's pretty wild. Anyway, I'm now going to take a look for you at a very interesting clip. I'm going to show this clip, and you tell me what's going on here. Let's take a look.
That's also, of course, true with COVID, right? We are all only as healthy as our neighbor is on our street, in our city, in our region, in our nation, and globally. And did we solve that? Like, did we actually manage to vaccinate everyone in the world? No. So highlighting water as a global commons and what it means to work together and see it both out of that kind of global commons perspective, but also the self-interest perspective, because it does have that parallel. It's not only important, but it's also important because we haven't managed to solve those problems which had similar attributes. And water is something that people understand. You know, climate change is a bit abstract. Some people understand it really well. Some understand it a bit. Some just don't understand it. Water, every kid knows how important it is to have water. When you're playing football and you're thirsty, you need water. So there's also something about really getting citizen engagement around this and really, in some ways, experimenting with this notion of the common good. Can we actually deliver this time in ways that we have failed miserably other times? And hopefully we won't keep failing on the other things, but anyway.
Very strange. And just to comment on this, this woman at the World Economic Forum was saying, hey, maybe we didn't do so well with vaccination, but maybe we can do a great job with water. I'm like, huh? That's interesting. Whatever you think of vaccination, I'm certainly happy somebody's interested in water. Where this goes, I don't know. I think she was basically just kind of throwing it out there. But anyway, very interesting. All right. Continuing here, economic miracle. All right. So this is a video that was just uploaded, I think, yesterday or day before. It's a short video, but Peter St.Onge, who's a pretty smart guy, makes some commentary here. Why don't we play that and see what he says?
The Bureau of Economic Analysis just released a huge revision to the past 3 years of economic data, and it is ugly. In short, it's exactly what you'd expect. Higher inflation, weaker growth, lower consumer spending, and a bigger share of GDP faked by government spending. Now, in theory, government statistics are periodically revised for noise, a cold winter, a holiday falling on a Sunday. In reality, however, the adjustments have become so lopsided that either government statisticians have gotten very bad at their job, or the original numbers are lies. After all, the media reports the original statistics breathlessly, and of course they ignore the revisions 3 years later, especially if those revisions are clustered dozens at a time and then pumped out late week, which is exactly what happened here. Now, the BEA knew their data was wrong. I mentioned in a video the epic divergence between two standard tallies of the economy, the famous GDP and the GDI. In theory, they are the same, what's bought versus what's sold. In fact, as recently as 2021, they did match with just a 0.02% divergence. Since then, things went weird. GDI remained flat. In fact, it fell, adjusting for population, while GDP allegedly jumped almost 2%. Now, historically, GDP tends to catch down to GDI. And in fact, it was worse because they revised both consumer spending and inflation, meaning we are poorer than we thought, and they're confessing they undercounted prices. In raw numbers, BEA revised consumer spending down for 5 of the 6 past quarters. The revision for the latest quarter was striking, going from 1.7% to 0.8%, which is a 9 sigma miss. It would occur by chance with roughly 1 in 1 quintillion odds. So that's about 4 billion times more likely than you winning the Powerball. Beyond their astronomy scale miss, they also reported that government consumption has actually grown faster than personal consumption for the past year, meaning the government Borg is taking over the economy. That progressively makes GDP more a measure of government waste than national prosperity. Meanwhile, the BEA's inflation revisions hiked prices in 7 out of 10 of Biden's quarters and revised just 1 down. That's a pretty impressive miss ratio for professional statisticians. It's about 4 to 1, and it took peak inflation up another notch. They revised savings numbers, which knocked off about 1.1 trillion we thought we had. And finally, the BEA revised GDP itself, going way back to 2020. And turns out that long after the fact and long after the election, the BEA now says that Trump's growth was stronger than they said, and Biden's growth was weaker, again with a 4 to 1 ratio in favor of Biden. So that means the contraction last year was actually down 2%, which is a quarter worse than thought. So what is next? Brought to you by Unchained. What's next is the economy's a lot weaker than they say, but there's a lot more to revise. At some point, our government statistics start to look like China, where the numbers are taken as propaganda and people rely on shadow indicators like grocery bills or tossed resumes. Reality, alas, does not care what spins paid government statisticians are selling this week. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.
And then there's this. Let's take a look at this. So turns out that Europe is not in great shape. The euro, what's happening really is that the dollar is doing well. Why? Well, we're offering huge interest, and it's basically sucking all the money out of other places like the Eurozone into the U.S. economy, which is, as a result, the U.S. economy is continuing to hang in there, as I think we've noticed. Let's take a look at the manufacturing index. Euro, again, is in deep trouble. All the lowest ones are negative. Interestingly enough, Thailand is one of them. And then world is slightly down. And then USA is just a tad down. So we're actually, in this chart, doing relatively well. China also. But of course, China is accustomed to double digits. So this is interesting. All right. And sure enough, here's, unfortunately, the definition of hanging in there includes debt going parabolic, up 275 billion in one day. Kind of interesting. Max Kaiser seems to think there's going to be a bank holiday coming, perhaps as early as next week. I don't think so. I know Max Kaiser, he's a cool guy, but I don't think he's right. Bank holiday means is where everybody kind of like goes, shut all the banks and you can't do anything, kind of weird thing. I don't think that's going to happen. But meanwhile, this is going to happen is we have inflation. Average monthly payment for new vehicles in the U.S. continues to rise. And that is because of the cost of borrowing and also because of the cost of materials. So all around, that's going up. Many people are paying well over $1,000 a month for their car. Now, check this out. This is an interesting little clip.
So I'm walking around Costco here, and I'm noticing these prices. For example, these mattress lentils, $15.99. I bought those a year ago for $6.99. I keep getting told that we got, 6-7% inflation. You got to be kidding me. Let's look at what else we got going on here. We literally bought this chicken broth, $5.69, 2 months ago. Dang, this is the flour we were buying for $5.99 last year.
What's interesting about this one is that prices for flour, $4.99 to $9.49 or something like that, actually doubling. So that is in line with, we remember a couple of years ago, we were talking about hyperinflation, and that really does seem to be with us. Now, why is hyperinflation important? It's because the currency-based system is, in our opinion, and clearly from the stats, is going downhill worldwide. The U.S. is doing relatively well because it's paying a lot for people to hold dollars, because of high interest rates. But that's, of course, hurting our economy big time. I don't even want to look at my mortgage rate anymore. I'm like, not looking. If I don't look, then it's not high, right? And so currency-based systems are on the outs, and commodity-based finance is on the way in. And that's why this is important. Commodity-based finance is where assets, things are priced by assets, because it's very hard to fake the price of a ton of lithium, for example, right? So in our case, we have an asset called water. And what's great about water is, number one, it's coming out of a government monopoly. So it's got this interesting premium for being early. Secondly, it does not go in ups and downs. Demand for water only increases, and water rates only increase. So we have it's an inflation hedge, and it's also a very stable. And so Linda asked, so the government is making the numbers what they want them to be. Yes, well, that was that Peter St.Onge video. I think what's happening, Linda, is that there's some initial optimistic numbers, like let's say it's that, but then eventually gets corrected, but nobody sees the corrections. They only see the initial reports, and that's kind of the sleight of hand there. Coming back, AJ did give me a definition of Oceania, by the way. It's all of the islands in the Pacific, excluding the Aleutians and some of the Japanese islands, which technically would include Australia and New Zealand, but you saw in that chart that was its own little group. So Oceania is not a lot of land mass. I've sailed all over the Pacific. It's mostly water, I guarantee you. You can go a long time without seeing land, let me tell you. Okay, so that's the story for another day. But in the 70s, I was in the South Pacific. All right, this is Ray Dalio's appendix to his book, Changing World Order. Check this out. This is a fascinating historical measure of currencies versus gold. Eventually, all currencies crash versus gold. The orange one, because of course the Dutch Republic has the color orange, ends with the collapse of the Bank of Amsterdam and never really recovers. Then we have the black is Great Britain, which does pretty well throughout the centuries, except for a couple of wars. But World War I really bankrupted the UK. What's interesting is that at the same time that happened, the US benefited from that taking over as a financial center, but that did not help the dollar. Notice how soon after World War I, we had the Great Depression, and that had the dollar lost value. Now I can understand how the US Civil War, we lost value, but why would the Great Depression have lost value for the dollar? That's really interesting. Well, I know why, because we printed our way out of it. That's what FDR did. Moving on here, we then had the inflationary 70s, which was, I think, a policy. We moved away from the gold standard, and here we are. All of these currencies are Netherlands, Great Britain, and USA are all close to zero compared to 100%. So what does that say about gold? Yeah, gold's great, except I'll tell you something. I've tried to invest in gold for the longest time, and I cannot catch an uptrend with this thing. And I think the reason why is it's highly manipulated. Again, this is a good reason to think of a productive commodity, because gold just sits there. Gold represents scarcity. Yes, it has some industrial value, but most of its value is in its scarcity. After all the gold ever mined in the history of the world just fills one Olympic swimming pool. It's a lot of gold, but it's still not. I mean, you'd think it was more. So scarcity makes the value of gold. And here we are. It's not productive. So this is where, again, we like this idea of water. Okay. Let's talk about the alternative. Let's talk about us. So I promised you that I'd go over our current capital offering. Many of you know this. So basically, the basic offer is for you place your money in a long-term investment in Water on Demand, and it is protected by the assets that Water on Demand acquires, and you get a 25% royalty. And then the first $20 million invested shares in 10% of Water on Demand Inc., the new subsidiary, with dilution protection. And I think we're up to about 8 million out of the 20. So there's still 12 million to go. Now, in addition, there's a free grant of preferred stock, price protected 150%. In other words, you invest $100,000, you get $150,000 worth of OriginClear stock that is protected. How is it protected? Well, it converts to common stock at the price at that time. So let's say, and this is important because the stock goes up, you get fewer shares, but we have protection on that. I'll mention that in a second. The price goes down, then you get more shares and you're protected. So it says there 165% for limited time. Actually, that expired. It's now 150%. And finally, we have double cashless warrants, which 5-year warrants, I think at 25 cents for 2 times your investment. So you can actually get 2 more rounds. Timothy, if you want some royalties, you invest, right? You got to invest in Series Y. I'll give you the link in a second, oc.gold/Ken, I believe. We'll get to that slide. Okay, so that tells us what's going on with that. And let me show you a little bit of the details on this. So this is a Series Y, and it was originally named to be 300 million because the people who were advising us thought we could get some institutional money. But what the concern was that it's too rich for $300 million, far too rich. So we ended up limiting it to 20. Okay, accredited investors, or if you're a non-US investor, this year it converts at 150%, and we intend for that multiple to decrease over time. So you'll get less and less. So we're currently at 150%. But once you've invested, that multiple never changes. You get the stock and that's done. Now, also, higher multiples are available with a larger investment. There's a table that makes it more. I don't have the details in front of me, but there is a larger investment does get you a higher multiple. We also, from time to time, we may encourage your early investment by awarding a higher multiple. Okay, convert any time. Let's say the low price is low, but once you convert it, then you no longer have price protection. And at that point, remember, it's a 6-month rule. And how am I protected from the stock price going down? When you convert, you get the stock price at that time. This adjusts for any dilution that may have occurred. Okay, so let's take a look at the next page here. For example, if the stock price is half of what it was when you invested, you get twice the number of shares as you would have otherwise. All right, now, if the stock goes up and you haven't converted, don't you lose out? Here's what's good news. There is let's say the stock price goes to $1 and you invested when it was, let's say, a penny. Well, then you have, 100 times less stock. Shares still valued the same, but fewer shares. But we have a limit of 25 cents. So you'll always get the shares for 25 cents, no matter if it goes to $1 or whatever. Okay. And leverage. For up to 5 years, you have the right to invest the same amount twice more at the guaranteed price of 25 cents. This is known as a warrant. And you can exercise it cashless. That means you can offset the cost of the warrant with shares. So you can basically just say, take warrants out of it to pay for the warrant. And that way, you don't have to pay a penny. Or you can just pay cash if you want to get a lot of shares. Use of funds, at least 50% is invested in a water on demand subsidiary, or it can be more. Over time, we want it to eventually be 100%. If the funds are idle, as they are currently, because we're still, working on a first pilot project, then we make secured loans, and all the Series Y investors are currently getting profit shares out of those loans. That's currently happening. And then, of course, the other is for our development of the whole water on demand network and managing the process, et cetera. Okay. Profit share is 25%. I'm not going to keep on going. The final thing, which Timothy was mentioning, we're developing a digital currency to secure the profit shares. Potentially, this could result in a market. So you may have the ability to sell your future earnings. But until that's in place, we will pay out profit shares in cash. And Timothy says, grab XRP tokens when you can. Well, I don't know if that's good. That's so he says, I have no idea. I don't claim to know what the heck is going on in the token market. That's for sure. Anyway, so that is the offering. It's a very good one. It's been very well tested, but it's only got about $12 million to go, and then we're done. This is a beautiful hybrid thing. It gets you multiples of your investment in OriginClear stock, plus long-term royalties on assets that you have a lien on to enforce that royalty, plus shares in Water on Demand Inc. So hopefully I've been able to give you a little bit of a outline of what this is. Okay, so with that, let's continue here. Let's go ahead and listen to the Carl Gould Collective, part 2. We had part 1 last week. Here we go.
And so if I'm a restaurant and I love the idea of everything that you're saying here, what is my investment? What am I looking at? And how much alteration do I have to do? Because right now I have a water line that comes into my restaurant. I have a sewer pipe that goes out. Everything's connected to those two things. So what's the reality of trying to put one of these systems in?
The reality, first of all, in incoming waters, most people keep accepting the water from the city. It's easy. Mm-hmm. Worst case, you can build a well, but that's for people who really, really are far, far from the grid. Generally, a water pipe is not a major. It's not like installing a sewage trench, right? A water pipe is a big deal. So number one, so people usually keep their water in intake, but they will get rid of their sewer outflow by commissioning a system. They can be in the back of the restaurant. It can be on the lot somewhere, whatever. The form factor can be very, very small, like a half a 20-foot container, 10 by 10, right? Something like 10 by 12, 10 foot long, 12 foot high. That's just about the smallest it gets. And you can plunk it down anywhere. Like I say, it's like those pods, right? Looks like one of those pods. Sure. And then, so plunk it in, boom, and now it's doing the job. Once a year, truck comes around to siphon out the sludge that's been accumulating, and the rest of it is good, clean water that you can recycle. You get a permit to dump it into the ground, into the aquifer at the level of treated water, which is good because it replenishes the aquifer. So that's at the very, very tail end of the process. Or you can pipe it back to the city, whatever works. But piping treated water is much more easier than piping sewage, because sewage typically requires pressured lines, high pressure lines, and those break, and now there's no more. So long story short is, at the worst, it's potable water coming one way, treated water going the other way, and that's a workable thing. Now, how big does a restaurant have to be to make it worthwhile? That's a different story. We typically, for example, we look at things like mobile home parks, or housing developments with 80, 100 doors. That's about right. Sizing these days. Later, it'll get smaller and smaller, but we're looking at what's the low-hanging fruit. Freeway rest stops are usually far from anything. Flying J, those kinds of places, RV campgrounds. We had a dealer in Pennsylvania that had a chance to relocate to really cheap land. No sewage anywhere near. So we made them self-contained, and they saved big time on the land.
Right on. So in doing all of this, you clearly you know a lot about the industry. You've done a ton of research. So what can a business do to improve their water sustainability overall? If they're just a normal business, they can't afford to do your system, or don't think they can, or that it's not available, or they can't get to it. What can a business do to just simply be more water sustainable?
Well, that's a good question. Bill, they'll have to look at, the problem we have is that the centralized systems don't recycle. America is terrible. We only recycle 1% of our water. Wow. Israel recycles almost 90%. We're very poor with that. And frankly, it's not the municipality's fault. It's the way the grid was built. It's a one-way grid. And so, treat it and dump it, treat it and dump it. To turn it around and send it back out is super, super difficult. And by the way, people hate it. It's called toilet to tap. They don't want to hear about it. So it's
there's an icky, like, what am I drinking here? What am I handling here? Yeah.
Even though all the water we drink has been recycled 10 million times, but whatever. It went.
Yeah, but we don't see that. And no one talks about that for sure, right? So,
but it went through a process. It went through whatever, becoming clouds and raining, et cetera. What a business can do, first of all they got to do to sign up with us is just an engineering study, $10,000, $15,000, and then they sign a contract, and now they're paying on the meter. So that we made it as painless as possible. That's one thing. But assuming that you're not ready to do that, then you should look at your water practices it's tough because most businesses are aware of the water they're using and they're trying because of water rate inflation. They're already trying. I know that agriculture is trying. Now I don't think that they should be growing rice in the Imperial Valley of California.
Right,
but
sure. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, but if
how much water does it take to grow a pistachio or an avocado? Yeah, it's crazy.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And let alone cattle. It's like 1,500 gallons of water per pound of beef or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, do all that stuff in the Midwest. Don't do it in California. But then California's stuck with doing hemp and barley, and that's not very profitable. So, there are good desert plants, but California, a $16 billion industry for agriculture, that buys a lot of lobbyists in Sacramento. So there's no easy, what I'm trying to tell you, Carl, is there's no easy solution for a business that it does not invest in some kind of on-site treatment.
Yeah, it doesn't sound it. It sounds like decentralization needs to be the way to go. And the private sector is going to have to save the public sector in a sense.
Well, here's the cool thing. In Ireland, water is free, right? Well, why isn't it free here? Well, it's because of the 90% users, that are hogging the system. Get them off the system. Now, municipalities are serving people, and they can do it far better. The tap water quality can improve dramatically. All kinds of things get better because now they've been unburdened, and I believe the core mission of any municipality is to serve people. That is, the taxpayers. Now, businesses are taxpayers too, but they have a solution. People don't. I can't readily go off the grid. It's very hard, for me to do it. I'd have to have a whole rig, and frankly, it's not realistic. So municipalities should continue to service the people, but with this strategy, they can. Water rates will stop their mad inflationary rate of increase. Water quality will increase. If you want to really have an eye opener, go to there's a site, ewg.org, environmentalworkinggroup.org, ewg.org/tapwater. Put in your zip code, and it'll show you the contaminants in your water, and you're like, really? Pretty scary.
Right. That's crazy. So now switching a little bit to your entrepreneurial journey, there are some special characteristics and traits and attributes that one needs to have, or at least be comfortable with, in order to stay in a disruptive, pioneering industry. Because, being one of the first ones in, they say you can get all the glory and you can be on the front page of the magazine, but you also take a lot of arrows in your back, So what is it like as a day in the life of somebody who spends his time trying to convince people about a problem they don't know exists, or it's not urgent to them, or it's not in their interest to change? So what is life like in as a day in the life for you?
Well, it's a constant search for traction, right? Because you can't convince people to do something they don't want. I watched a seminar once where the speaker was talking about, well, there's let's say out of the 100%, there's maybe 12% that want it now, need it now.
Yeah.
Fine. But that's not who you market to. You market to the next 20, 25% who could be flipped over into it, right? So what's going to flip these people? And one of the key things is you got to constantly, in my opinion, reevaluate what you're doing. Because as entrepreneurs, we have a will, we want to get things done, we're going to push. But sometimes we're pushing in the wrong direction. I used to be, back in the day, very, very young man, I was a ship captain on merchant ships. If you go off course, after a while, you're going to have to make up all that and get back on course. So the more you go off course, you better figure it out, right? And so, am I on course? And that requires, without giving up on that drive, a willingness to evaluate, okay, how's this working? You got to be a very, very data friendly. You got to be willing to look at the data trends, your stats, what's going on. And also constantly, what you're doing, Carl, is get educated, right? Get viewpoints from other people, what to do, both in your industry and generally. So there's a tremendous amount of analysis and evaluation that goes on, and reevaluation. Well, is this right? Wait, okay, we're going to tweak it. And that I even, back in my consulting days, I trademarked this as mistake-based marketing. Yeah. You literally make mistakes on purpose, but know you're doing it, right? Fail early, fail often. No. It's like broken field running. That works very well. Back, in the day, before the year 2000 in tech, we used to just spend a lot of money on research, and then 2000 happened, and there was no more budget for research. But in a good way, that's why I had to devise this whole idea of mistake-based marketing, because I had no budgets, but people were going to let me experiment. So I would throw stuff out, see if it stuck. And the key is how fast you learn. Don't get too committed to the wrong path, et cetera. So that, I think, is the crux of it, is this, let's imagine that you are in a box, which is your present condition. And let's assume that you're in the right industry. You don't have to change industries, but you're kind of stuck. Now, to get out of that box, you're going to have to do a whole lot of this mistake-based marketing, a lot of jitter. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then you get it. You get something that gets traction. Now, go for it and build it up, crank it up. And then you get to a stage where, as my rowing coach used to say, small changes. Don't do vast. Once you got it, okay, now, just keep working it. And that's a progressive process. And you just keep repeating. Get out of the box with the mistake-based marketing, get the right formula. And then once it's rolling, adjust with small changes, incremental changes, and you will succeed.
Right on. As a builder in the past, I used to build off the grid homes. And so I was the guy doing the septic system, and I wasn't drilling the well, but I was certainly standing there while it was being drilled. So this is always fascinating to me, how to create a self-sustaining, decentralized residence. The old paradigm is being smashed in so many different areas, and now we can add water to that list, right? The electric car, the quantum computing, chat GPT, AI, and now, yes, at long last, water. The new frontier. Thanks for joining. So everybody, check in with Riggs on OriginClear.com. Learn more about his system, what he's doing, his innovative approach, his mistake-based consulting. Fail your way forward as quickly as you can. Riggs, thanks once again for being on the show, and we look forward to learning more about what you're doing and keeping track of what you're doing over time.
We'll touch base in a few months, and thank you so much for having me.
And there we go with that one there. Now we arrive at the most important part of it all. You know what you're waiting for. It's the freewheeling discussion.
You gotta love the freewheeling discussion.
I'm here.
You are here.
Well,
yeah, let me see. Hang on a second.
You're at a function. There we go. You're looking good there. You're in your car?
Yeah.
I'm in my car.
I love it.
Yeah, as long as the cop doesn't knock on my window asking me what I'm doing. Hey, pal, what are you doing here?
That only used to happen to me when I was sleeping in the car by the side of the road, and like, knock, knock, knock. What are you doing? I'm sleeping.
I was sleeping, but now I'm awake. No, listen, that was a great interview.
Yes.
And it was really nice to see how he sees, it's funny because he made a comparison to some of the very technical innovations, the things that are really exploding, AI and ChatGPT and all that stuff. And the fact that he immediately equated this type of disruption, as seemingly low tech as some folks think it is, it is amazingly high tech. And he immediately made that connection. So I thought that was really exciting.
Well, especially the water on demand network that we're building. And I think next week I'm going to go through that whole network flow chart, that whole waterfall.
Sure.
That is going to have to be very adaptive. I hate to use the word AI because everybody's using it, but there's going to be a heck of a lot of intelligence in the system to make it work. So with that, I think that we're going to have a very interesting technology phase where we're part of this. Look, this is all this about, the water scarcity. There's going to be 50% scarcity of water by 2040. Well, that's not so far away, right?
No.
It's a quarter century.
No. And scaling this at points of discharge now could seriously bend that curve. It's going to take decades to correct what it took a century or so to break. But the idea is we are within grasp of being able to scale this. And it doesn't take many points of discharge to start to, like you talked about course correction, right? So if you go off course just 2 degrees over a long enough period, that becomes a tremendous distance, and will have made a tremendous change or a tremendous positive effect on water quality, in decades to come. We don't have to do a 90-degree angle right now. That's not possible anyway. So that's just something that popped in my head.
Well, no, it's that's exactly right though. The biggest challenge we have is awareness. Right.
Right.
As soon as people understand the value proposition, they get it. Right. Carl got it. And it's getting other people that need these types of solutions to be more aware that they exist. Right. That's what Dan is so good at, is making that process as simple for people as possible on the modular water system side. And on the water on demand side, we can do that same thing as we continue to raise awareness. And I think it's only going to take those first few installations for people to be able to understand. And then again, the efforts that we're doing to raise awareness, and some big things happening, some good exciting stuff. Talk to Ken. That all of that stuff combined is really going to help raise that awareness and let people know that we're on the hunt for to provide you solutions. You just need to come talk to us.
Riggs, you mentioned a book a lot. I think it's Inside the Tornado. Inside the Tornado talks about going to the advocates first. We don't the market that has an immediate, urgent, desperate need to deploy this today is already massive. Now, if you can multiply that by the folks that have that same level of need but can't afford it, adding that second layer, the WOD part of it, right? That magnifies this dramatically. That's already so big that the thought of it is really, really exciting. And the world has finally woken up to the fact that this is a necessary and essential next step for us, right? Riggs would often say, and even 5 years ago, when I started with the company, just talked, raising money for the company, they were kind of like, water, okay, there wasn't that, like now they go, oh my God, it's the most important thing in the world. I never got that 5 years ago, AJ. There you go. Right. And then it's bridging. Oh, he was looking for the file. Okay.
So here we go. So this is for Inside the Tornado. And what it is at the very beginning, you get this leading edge of the innovators. These are the geeks, right? These are the people who adopted the Apple Newton and no one else did. Then you get the visionaries, and that's the phase right now where we are with the early adopters, or you also call strategic buyers. These are the people who are doing it because they see a visionary value in it. And so the customers we have is that. Now, there's a chasm. How do you cross the chasm? There's this thing called the bowling alley right there, which gets you to the tornado. What is the bowling alley? That's where you create an application that then propagates, let's say, for example, the case study was document management, and a company called Documentum found a killer app, which was document management for the FDA drug approval process, which is 600,000 pages. Okay, so they found that. Boom. That was immediate uptake. And then, of course, it spread to other pharma companies that needed the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so they got into the bowling alley on document management. For us, it is this concept of the modular water system in a container, drop it in, water system in a box. That is the killer app for us. And it is ripping through verticals like travel stops, mobile home parks, housing developments, et cetera. Why? Because it's so obvious and so simple. And the word is spreading with these webinars that Dan does. Once you do enough of that critical mass, you get the tornado of adoption, which is people are just adopting because, hey, everybody else is, right? Well, everybody else is doing it. What the heck? And then finally get onto Main Street. And then you get the backside of it, which is people who eventually get around to it. Okay, so we're well beyond the innovators. That was Dan early 20 years ago when decentralized water was not even a thing. And now we're really in that early adopter stage, strategic buyers, people who are paying for whole products who absolutely have to have it. And where do they go? They go to us. And then that gets us across the chasm into that bowling alley. So that's a quick, discussion of this concept, which I love, of the bowling alley. And in fact, we covered it in in a CEO briefing a long time ago, but Jeffrey Moore, amazing guy. Anyway, so thank you for bringing that up because it's very true what's going on. All right. Well, as usual, we're getting up to the hour, and our friends love this, but they also have other things to do. I'm going to bring up the contact details, oc.gold/Ken, and jump in. I've discussed the Series Y offering in detail in this, and Series Y really is a powerful thing, but when it's done, it's done. That $20 million ain't no more, because it's a hybrid that has all kinds of, and then there's war, and then there's more. It's kind of like, when you're trying to buy something online, it keeps offering you more.
It's an offering that was developed before $1 was raised, right? So it was just incredibly, tons of bells and whistles, because at a time when this was a really, really cool idea and concept, but we hadn't raised a nickel for it yet.
Right.
This was necessary, right? To kind of bridge that enthusiasm gap. We are so far beyond that stage, yet it's kind of easier to keep this in place, at least for now. So we just, we say, what the heck? But, I really think we're getting to a place where we're going to be talking to a different crowd very soon.
Amen to that. And we are creating next week. I'm going to show everyone the new forecasts with the new integration of progressive water into, so water on demand, modular water, and progressive water, all integrated. How it looks. We've done a tremendous amount of work to make it as realistic as possible, because the process we're involved with this letter of intent that I can't talk about requires us to be extremely realistic. And I'm going to share those charts next week. So be there or be square. Fill out your Zoom survey. We really need the information. So don't hesitate. We love to know what's going on. Thank you very much. And Ken, I hope you and Amanda had a great time.
She looks phenomenal. I mean, I just want to go back in there to be seen with her. Because they're like, who's this young girl you're with? And I'm like, hey, that's
Cradle Robber.
She's been around for 20 years. Right. Cradle Robber. Right. I'm having a great time. But I always have to come out to see to see my peeps. Right.
Good. I'm glad you did. And AJ, thank you very much for joining. I was going to try and get in an interview of your new man.
Yes.
But Josh, but yes. We'll do that next week. He's a whiz, and
technically he's our new man now, isn't he?
Yes, he's our new guy. Yeah. For the crowded B, we're bringing in Josh. He's very skilled in a lot of the social media realms. We're looking to scale our presence there in a big way to really help further the mission of letting people know more about us and make sure they understand the right facts about us and not just the presuppositions that they might have. So
right. And that's more on that course correction stuff, right? If you go off course early, it's very, very hard to bring that viewer back to really where our reality is. So the discussions, just Riggs, real quick, just for the audience's sake, the discussions that AJ and I are having about mapping this whole thing out, when this is implemented, it's going to blow everyone's mind. The ability to communicate our message has never been better.
Yeah, I'm loving it. Oh yes, it's very exciting. Because I hear glancing parts of it too. And I might add that virality is a big part of Josh's job. We want to get viral.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. It's been great. And see you next week. We'll show you some great charts with progressive, and I think you'll love it. And they're 3D.
Good night, folks.
3D charts. Ciao.